Dawn unfurled over Riverrun in a hush of slate-blue mist, the kind of spring morning that promised fresh trout in the shallows and new leaves on the alders but could not yet hide the lingering chill of winter. Smoke from the chimneys curled lazily upward before the slightest breeze shredded each puff and carried the scent of hardwood through the courtyards. The castle's 3 walls, stone ribs clasping the emerald wedge of land between tumbling rivers, glimmered faintly where dew clung to embrasures. Guards walked their watch in measured silence. Black metal studs on boiled leather jerkins winked whenever torchlight met the pale wash of dawn. Inside the great hall, Lord Hoster Tully's breath hung in the air like an accusation against spring's tardiness. The hearth roared, yet neither warmth nor comfort reached him while 4 slender parchment rolls lay unbroken on the oaken table. Each bore a fresh crimson ribbon that proclaimed urgency. The hand's sigil in wax, pressed last night somewhere between King's Landing and half the world. Couriers had changed horses thrice on the river roads to present them before sunrise. Hoster removed the ribbon from the first scroll as though slicing open his own wrist. The letter came from Lord John Arryn at the Eyrie, his beloved friend of youth, now father-in-law to Hoster's eldest daughter. Loyal as you are, it began, know that our king has forsaken all reason. Robert of House Baratheon raises banners for justice. We require you and yours beside us. The words swam on the page. A second letter from King's Landing followed, this one sealed with the hand and torch of Tywin Lannister. No treason burned in its lines, only a cool reminder that Lord Tywin remained neutral, yet watchful. And then the third scroll, penned in a softer hand, the quill strokes of Catelyn herself, begging her father to side with honor and stand beside Brandon Stark, who would soon wed her. The last message carried the horrible stench of wildfire. It was the king's writ, demanding by royal decree that Hoster surrender the heads of Eddard Stark, Robert Baratheon, and Jon Arryn or be counted an enemy of the Iron Throne. Lord Hoster's hawkish eyes drifted to the tapestries on the walls. Graceful leaping trout, silver in moonlit thread, weaving forever against a field of blue. Rivers were change itself. Houses that tried to dam a river without first understanding it found themselves washed away in ruin. In that early light he read and read again, then silently pressed all 4 letters against the embers until the seals blistered and burst in little sighs. Edmure entered as the third roll smoldered, crimson edges blackening like parchment wings of ash. The young heir's cheeks flushed as though he'd galloped miles to arrive, but no saddle creak betrayed him. He had only followed the curling smoke scented with burning wax. "Father," Edmure said, brow furrowed. "Was that Catelyn's hand?" "It was," Hoster answered. "Go rouse every bannerman sleeping beneath our roof. They will have audience at midday. Send ravens to those beyond the rivers. There will be no dawn meal today, only decisions." The words surprised even him with their firmness. Edmure fled to obey, yet at the door paused. "Catelyn will not." "Do as I bid," Hoster said, and his voice cracked like ice on the tumblestone. The small council chamber of King's Landing smelled of sweat and varnish, too cramped for the 3 lords it presently held. Pycelle's beard trembled as he fussed with parchment lists of grain, of bolts of wool, of crossbow quarrels. Opposite him, Grand Maester Gemmin, young compared with Pycelle's centuries, dipped a quill and quietly scratched margins no one would read. But it was the red-haired man between them that stole the air. Ser Brynden Tully, newly raised to Lord Commander of the City Watch, tightened the leather lacings of his dark cloak. The mud-brown of King's Law had never suited him, so he dyed the cloak a color as red as river clay. Sly murmurs already called the officers beneath him clay fish, yet mutters mattered less than duty. He had sworn service to King Aerys 2 moons ago, when Robert's banners first rose on Storm's End's windy bluffs. If Riverrun broke faith, the name Tully would drown in a torrent of charges. Treason, rebellion, oath-breaking. Page hurried in. "Lord Commander, the Queen needs escort from the Maiden Vault. She's taken ill again." Brynden gave a curt nod. Pycelle cleared his throat with theatrical menace. "The Queen will not leave the Red Keep. We cannot risk her safety whilst traitors gather at the Trident." "Your concerns are noted," Brynden said, already moving. His boots clacked on the marble. The sound lingered like hammerfalls forging river metal. Outside, the capital refused to rouse. Flea Bottom's alleys groaned with last night's wine. But in the street of steel, armorers hammered breastplates bright and untested. Carters stacked barrels of lamp oil and pitch. Rumor said Ares would flood the catacombs with wildfire if the rebels dared approach. Bryndon's jaw squared itself. If the king torched his own city, it would not be Robert Baratheon who killed King's Landing. It would be madness crowned. Far north, the wind whipped harsh across the snow-choked neck. Eddard Stark guided his vanguard through morning frost, eyes red from lack of sleep. Dawn carved the reeds and fens into silhouettes of spears. Word had reached them 2 nights ago. Riverrun remained silent. No banners rode to Robert. Jon Arryn offered hostages, yet Lord Hoster withheld. And with Brandon Stark murdered in Aerys' twisted court, Eddard carried both grief and duty heavier than mail. Maester Luwin consulted crinkled letters by lamplight each dusk. None changed the Riverland's silence. Ned had planned to draw Hoster's swords forth at Maidenpool, yet they were still weeks away. Without them, his host looked more like a desperate hunt than a noble army. Every missing Tully spear robbed him of sleep, of expectation, of vengeance. They reached Moat Caelan's broken towers on the 12th day of their march. The men found comfort in campfires, but Eddard whispered to Howland Reed at the reed's edge. The Cranaglord spoke of hidden causeways and glistening secrets beneath black water, though his tales did little to warm Ned's heart. Storm clouds gathered to the east. Lightning flashed violet once, twice over the marshes, and in each flash Eddard saw Riverrun's lord casting lots with fate. At midday in Riverrun's solar, banners of blue and red wavered above a company of chairs forming a crescent before Lord Hoster. Lords Vance, Piper, Blackwood, Bracken, Mallister, voices of the Trident, sat in tense expectation. Edmure stood behind his father. The chestnut hair he so often boasted of now clung damply to his brow, matted by sweat. Hoster did not speak until the tide of whispers had died into fearsome quiet. "You know why I've summoned you," he said, voice steady. "Robert Baratheon raises rebellion. The king demands our swords. Jon Arryn calls for ours. We stand between storm and fire, lads. My heart lies with my daughters, with peace, with the realm's children who know only songs of summer." Lord Tyto's Blackwood banged a fist. "Words will not halt Robert's march, and swords will not stop Dragonfire if Aerys unleashes it," Hoster answered. Jono's Bracken snorted. "Swords earned us Riverlands when dragons came last. A century gone, and yet I'd wager cold steel prevails again." Mark Piper leaned forward. "Your daughter rides north with the Starks. Your fortune lies there too. Back the rebellion. Brandon's ghost demands it." Hoster's face hardened like limestone. "Brandon Stark lies in ash at King's Landing. But Brandon Stark was to wed my Catelyn and carry her to Winterfell, not drag me into treason. If I ride against the Iron Throne now, I brand all of you rebels. The Targaryen banners may burn, but they burn bright. I will not ignite my rivers simply to warm Robert's ambition." The room erupted. Edmure felt the noise like hammers to his skull. Loyalties tore. Each bannerman argued blood feuds past and promised honors ahead. But when dusk painted the solar windows ruby, a vote stood hewn from exhaustion. 3-2, the lords bound themselves to King Aerys. House Tully would hold the trident for the crown, and Riverrun would dispatch Ser Carol Vance south with 5,000 men to strengthen the garrison at King's Landing. Edmure closed his eyes to steady spinning thoughts. Catelyn's letter burned behind his eyelids. He thought of her blue eyes, her stubborn laugh, the way she plucked at harp strings on summer nights until frogs joined in chorus. Now she would ride north into snows while her father armed men against her path. That night, Edmure sat alone upon the stone parapet above the western river, feet dangling over swirling moon-silver water. The tumbling current slapped foundations below, soothing as lullabies until leather scraped behind him. He turned to find his uncle Brynden, cloaked in city guard crimson, one boot upon the parapet like a man storming battlements. "Ravens fly faster than horseflesh," Brynden said. I know the choice father made. Edmure's jaw tightened. He chose the safety of the small folk. He chose to wager our name upon a dragon's madness, Brynden murmured. I've seen what that madness looks like. I commanded watchmen to scour Flea Bottom after the king burned Rickard Stark alive. Ares's justice reeks of charred bone. Edmure shuddered. And yet you guard him. I guard the city, Brynden corrected.
I guard innocent folk.
If I stand aside, pyromancers light their hellish jars, and 500,000 souls bake in green flame. Someone has to hold the keys to those vaults long enough for Robert, or anyone sane, to relieve me. He offered his nephew a wineskin. Edmure drank a swallow. It tasted of tears. If father sends our banners, he asked, will you fight against us? Brynden glanced out at the swirling red fork. Rivers converge. Somewhere they must merge again. Until then, nephew, remember this. Rivers choose their path when boulders block them, but water always finds the sea. Then he left the parapet as quietly as he'd come, and Edmure sat alone with distant torches flickering like stars trapped upon the water's restless skin. In Storm's End, thunder smote the ramparts loud enough to shake banners from their stanchions. Robert Baratheon leaned over a dew-slick battlement, greasy hair plastered to his brow by salt-laden wind. Below, the narrow causeway looked fragile beneath waves that crashed to either side. Lord Mace Tyrell's siege encircled Storm's End in a belt of shining steel, but the Tyrells waited for famine, not assault. A messenger knelt in the alcove beyond the archway, reading from a sodden parchment. Riverrun stands for Ares, my lord. Lord Hoster musters men to defend the city, not join your host. Robert growled, voice throaty as a bear. Stubborn old fish. If the rivers run red for Ares, we'll damn well paint them brighter. Stannis lingered in the shadows, arms folded. We cannot outflank a Riverlands host while the Reach starves us. We need our Stormlords. His tone lacked fear, but the whites of his knuckles showed. Robert turned lightning blue eyes on his brother. Our Stormlords have hearts as big as hills, but they will not matter if the trident bars our path to King's Landing. Ned will march until his feet bleed. Aaron too. Without Tully spears, they'll be crushed between the royal host and the dregs of every sellsword Ares hires. Then we break this siege, Stannis said. At dawn we sortie. We burn Tyrell siege engines. You think small, Robert cut him off. We need a hammer blow the realm will never forget. The storm built overhead, thunderclaps rattling stones. Lightning read Robert's face. A warlord shaping destiny. Tell Renly to scour the cellars, he ordered. We still hold King Garth's horn, and a barrel of Myrish fire, I wager. We'll send Ares a song of thunder that shakes from Dorne to the wall. His grin, fierce as a cracked helm, left Stannis colder than any wind. Southward, in the red keep's windowless corridors, Queen Riella clutched her swelled belly and prayed to the seven in voices no mortal ear could hear. Ser Jaime Lannister watched over her bedchamber doorway, restless. Through stone walls, echoes of metal rang. Smiths reforging gates, commoners conscripted into fresh levies, the clatter of chainmail hauled from dusty vaults. Wildfire casks rolled along hidden passages like serpents in barrels, every bump a drumbeat of dread. Prince Rhaegar had vanished again, north, rumor claimed, to treat with lords half-turned. But ravens said he lingered near Summerhall's ruins, seeking prophecy while the realm bled. Ares seldom left his darkened audience hall. When Jaime had last been summoned, he found the king staring at a purple bruise on his forearm, chanting about betrayal hiding beneath a fish's scales. The bruise, he insisted, looked like a trout leaping. They leap right into the flames, Ares hissed as he clawed at the mark until his nails drew thin lines of blood. Jaime bore the memory like iron shackles. He served a king he no longer recognized, yet vows bound him tighter than iron. Their conversations repeated each night. Riella would whisper, "He talks to cinders. If the rivers rebel, he will burn them. If they do not, he will burn everything else." Jaime would answer nothing, for answers had edges sharper than Valyrian steel. And all the while outside, Bryn Den Tully's city watch drilled by torchlight, their new red cloaks snapping in gusts off Blackwater Bay. Autumn crept south as the first skirmishes split the riverlands. Lord Vance's column, proud trout banners snapping, met a scouting party loyal to John Arryn near Maidenpool's muddy lanes. Arrows hissed through morning fog. Men died knee-deep in crabgrass, their blood mingling with brackish tidal rot. The survivors carried songs of the clash. How rivermen stood tall beside banners of the dragon. How northerners in boiled leather fought like wolves starved all summer. Songs bore fear further than ravens. In Riverrun, Hoster held council daily, reading lists of rations, forging alliances with Crownland's houses that still bent knee to Aerys. But each raven brought worse tidings. Lord Mallister fled Seaguard to join Ned Stark, stirring talk of Blackwood and Piper shifting soon. When news of Robert's escape from Storm's End reached him, an impossible dash down the coast with all the fury of a storm god, Hoster gripped the windowsill so hard the stone cut his palm. Blood-dotted limestone blue, staining castle walls much as war would soon stain river reeds. Edmure, restless, walked long nights along the river road, listening for hooves. The moon waxed and waned. He dreamed of Catelyn batting away Ned's consolations, her pride brighter than moonlight upon the furs about her shoulders. He wrote her letters he dared not send, asking forgiveness for what their father must do, but each dawn he burned them like offerings to ghosts. Then, one bleak morning, a horn sounded from the western gate. A single rider in black and gold approached. The man's cloak bore 3 dogs chained, his helm a snarling hound. Ser Gregor Clegane dismounted with a careless thud, tossed reins to a trembling stable boy, and demanded audience. Hoster received him in the yard under cold drizzle. "My Lord Hand sends greetings," Clegane barked, voice like gravel in a mill. He presented a sealed letter from Tywin Lannister. Hoster broke the wax, read quickly, and his face bleached paler even than the weather. When he looked up, rain streaked his cheeks like tears. Tywin pledged Lannister swords, wagons of grain, and barrows of gold, if Riverrun held steady for the crown. But if Riverrun faltered, Casterly Rock would ride east to claim the Riverlands for the realm's stability. Hoster thanked Ser Gregor and dismissed him to wine and hearth fire. Yet the old lord was shaken. Lannister aid came wrapped in velvet, yet inside lay an edict of subjugation. He saw clearly, whichever victor emerged would carve new dominions across the Trident's fertile fields. If Robert triumphed, the Starks would claim oaths from every lordling who'd spurned them. If Aerys prevailed, Tywin would rule through debt, fear, and that monstrous hound he'd loosed in Riverrun's yard. Afternoon found Hoster alone in the Godswood, knees upon damp loam before the ancient weirwood. Its white bark bled crimson streaks like faces screaming in silence. Hoster pressed trembling hands to its cool trunk. "I chose the safety of my people," he whispered, "but the river twists. Where do I lead them now, gods?" No voice answered but the hush of leaves. When Hoster rose, mud clung to his knees, dark, rich, red as dried blood. Winterfell's courtyards lay hushed beneath rime as Eddard Stark prepared to march again. A raven arrived courtesy of Howland Reed through hidden marsh routes, bearing dire news. Riverrun for the king, but crackling with dissent that might splinter. Ned read the scroll before the heart tree, letting weirwood eyes watch his fear. Words bit like snow against bare flesh. Brandon's bones had frozen in street cages. Lyanna lay captive beyond his reach. Yet he could not strike south until the north answered fully. He convened his bannermen, Manderleys, Umbers, Karstarks, beneath soaring beams of the great hall. "We ride for Moat Cailin," Ned declared, voice quiet, deliberate. "Riverrun stands in our way, yet I will not bleed rivers red to feed a dragon's supper. We will parley. We will remind Lord Hoster of the oaths once spoken on this very soil when Catelyn and Brandon pledged troth." Hallis Malin asked, "And if he refuses?" Ned's eyes, gray as winter sky, grew still. "Then the river must change course." They rode within the week, wolf banners whipping in wind like hungry maws. Snowmelt swelled rivers. Every ford they crossed looked eager to tear men from horses. Yet hearts burned hotter than water's bite. At White Harbor, Lord Wyman raised 2,000 fresh swords and sent half his larders south. At Barrowton, Lady Dustin whispered bitter curses for Brandon's death and gifted Ned a sword wrought for her late husband's hand. At the Twins, Lord Walder Frye offered passage for a debt to be decided later. Ned accepted warily, marking the old man's smile for future reckoning. Meanwhile, Robert broke siege at Storm's End with cunning legend would soon reshape into song. Under a moonless sky, he rode through blackened surf, scaled Tyrell-held cliffs, and led a sortie that burned 3 siege towers in a single night. When dawn exposed the Reach encampments in disarray, thunder rolled from the sea. Stannis had slipped the blockade, bringing grain enough to feed Storm's End through winter. Robert's war horn roared as he galloped along the shore, hammer held high, daring any man to take it. Not one accepted. His legend soared on gull wings across half the realm. At Riverrun, Edmure heard those tales and felt his gut knot with envy and dread. The small folk cheered in inns dim-lit by tallow. Secretly, they rooted for the boy from the Stormlands who laughed like summer thunder. Robert fights for the realm, they said, for love of Lyanna. Edmure forbade such talk, but words, once loosed, could not be yoked back into silence. Petitioners arrived each dawn complaining of taxes, levies, demands for grain. War, they whispered, should not starve children. Edmure found no answer. His father's counsel grew shorter. Lord Blackwood disappeared to Raventree Hall, citing urgent harvest matters. Lord Piper's envoy rode northeast, chasing rumors of Stark banners. Even Jonos Bracken's loyalty wavered like a candle in floodwind. When Edmure confronted him on the ramparts one rainy twilight, the burly lord only said, "A trout cannot swim in 2 rivers at once, boy. Choose." But Edmure could not choose. Riverrun's walls were his cradle. His father's word was river law. And yet each night, he dreamed of Catelyn's face. Equal parts sorrow and fury, eyes bright as river ice. In the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, Aerys II Targaryen walked barefoot, muttering. Torches along the corridor hissed with pitch-fed hunger. At each cell, he peered through barred slits and whispered to the prisoners. Rivers flow, fire consumes. Which will you choose? Their answers, sobs, curses, silence, fueled his delight. On his tongue he tasted ash-sweet victory. Wildfire casks lined the vaults deeper still. He visited those often, stroking bronze stopcocks like beloved pets. Rhaegar returned quietly one dawn, cloak travel-stained, eyes haunted by tragedies yet to unfold. He knelt before his father, speaking of prophecy, of a song of ice and fire, of a child yet unborn. Aerys spat on marble tiles and called him a dream waster. "Speak not of songs when thunder hammers my gates," he shrieked. "Bring me lords' heads or sing to the flames." Rhaegar rose to go, yet paused. "The river lords will not hold," he said softly. "Their hearts go where honor flows, and honor flows to the north." Aerys laughed until bloody spittle flecked his chin. "Fire flows faster." Rhaegar did not answer. He departed the capital again that same hour, bound, some said, for Dragonstone, others for the Trident itself to rally wavering allies. Jaime watched him pass beneath the gatehouse, thinking Rhaegar looked more ghost than man. And ghosts, he knew, could not win wars alone. River by river, loyalty shifted. When Lord Blackwood openly declared for Eddard Stark, archers from Raventree Hall ambushed Ser Carol Vance's column near Duskendale. Arrows rained like the first leaf fall of autumn. Carol fell, pierced through gorget and heart. Survivors limped west to tell of Blackwood treachery, and of small folk cheering the wolf-shed banners riding behind. Hoster Tully received the news at table but refused to eat another bite, waving away venison as though it were ash. He called for Ser Desmond Grell, his master-at-arms, and ordered him to double every watchtower's beacons. "If Blackwood and Mal Lister turn, so might Fry," he said. "Fry fences both sides," Desmond replied, voice sour. He would sell his mother for a copper groat, then pay him double whatever Robert offers, Hoster muttered, and pray his 80 sons remember. Yet coins bought only time. The trident's currents pulled away from the dragon. When the stone mill of Stony September revolted, Robert Baratheon himself led the defense against crown-loyal forces. The battle became song. Robert smashing men from saddles, Gendry's unknown father forging new blades in back alleys, townsfolk hurling stones at goldcloaks who wore no gold but crimson. Brynden Tully rode north at the head of city watch reinforcements, but his heart twisted with conflict. Inside Stony September he found chaos. Rebels, small folk, lords disguised in muddy surcoats. He looked upon Robert across a smoky square and saw a man drenched in blood but laughing, a hammer dripping scarlet. And he realized this Baratheon led not just an army but the hearts of the realm. Brynden pulled his men back under cover of night, claiming false reports of plague. The tale traveled swiftly. The Blackfish would not draw sword against Robert Baratheon. When King Aerys heard, he foamed with rage, naming Brynden traitor and vowing dragonfire upon every Tully wharf. Hoster Tully coughed blood on a frosty dawn, his health failing as swiftly as his alliances. Edmure stood watch beside his bed, dread pooling in his gut. Maester Vyman brewed poultices, but the old lord's lungs rattled, each breath a dying fish flopping on deck. Edmure, Hoster rasped, I tried to keep our rivers safe. You did, Edmure whispered, though the words tasted false. Villages burned along the Tumblestone. Refugees pressed at Riverrun's gates daily. Promise me, Hoster wheezed. No matter who wins, the realm's children shall drink clean water still. I promise, Edmure said, tears cutting paths down stubble-rough cheeks. Outside the sick room, Jonos Bracken waited with 3 captains. The king demands fresh levies, he said bluntly. He means to hold the trident itself. We march east within the week. Edmure stared at him, hollow-eyed. We have no grain left to feed another levy. Then take it from Blackwood fields when we've torched them, Bracken growled. Edmure's hand dropped to dagger hilt, yet he stilled. Killing Bracken would shatter fragile unity. Instead he summoned every surviving captain and told them their new orders. We do not march east. We hold the trident's western bank. We defend our own folk. Bracken's face darkened. That's treason against the king. It is duty to the Riverlands, Edmure answered. Night saw Bracken ride out with half his men, banners snapping in dark wind toward Aerys' summons. Morning brought ravens. Blackwood, Piper, and Mal Lister pledging fealty to Eddard Stark. Edmure read each letter and wept, not for betrayal but relief. Choice had been wrested from him. The tide had chosen its course. Yet his father still lay dying behind oaken doors. If he shifted now, Riverrun might fracture altogether. Maester Vyman coaxed him. Sometimes a river must break its banks to spare the valley downstream. Edmure nodded, resolved. He penned a single raven to his sister at White Harbor, sealing it with the trout leaping. Then he donned chainmail, crimson cloak pinned with silver fish, and walked onto Riverrun's battlements to greet the dawning sun. Sunrise lit 2 armies staring across the Red Fork outside the stone cottages of Fairmarket. On one bank, Robert's host amassed, Stormlords, Northmen, Vale Knights, Blackwood Archers, Piper Spearmen, Mal Lister Heavy Horse. Wolves, robins, and trouts intermingled like colors on a painter's palette. On the opposite bank, Crown Loyalists under Jonos Bracken planted banners by the river edge. The roaring Red Dragon of Targaryen, Black Crow of Fry, Silver Trout of Tully, though few rivermen stood beneath it now, and Crimson Lion of Lannister, Ser Gregor Clegane's outriders already trampling fields. Robert thundered up the line on a warhorse black as midnight, hammer aloft. Beside him rode Eddard, face calm as deep water. Jon Arryn positioned his falcons to exploit any breach, and midday horns blared. And yet, before the first arrow loosed, a ripple ran through Bracken's host. Fry bannermen lowering spears, turning horses. They galloped away upriver, banners fluttering retreat. Half Bracken's line followed. Across the way, Robert roared a laugh that split clouds. He waved hammer forward. Drums beat. The charge began. Ser Gregor Clegane spurred his destrier into the shallows, aiming to meet Robert in single combat. But an arrow from some unknown longbow found the mountain's eye through slit helm. The beast toppled, splash sending spray high as a fountain. Robert plunged into the spray, gripping hammer, but the mountain did not rise. Crown host faltered, men wavering where the giant fell. Jonos Bracken's voice cracked as he ordered advance, yet his men stumbled. Then, amid water-whipped mist, Brinden Blackfish emerged on a great gray courser, City Watch crimson torn away, a cloak of Tully blue glistening. He drew steel. Behind him rode 200 of the finest watchmen, men who had chosen conscience over crown. They crashed into Bracken's flank, scattering spears like brittle reeds. The battle dissolved into rout by afternoon's end. Robert strode out dripping river water, hair plastered but laughing still. He knelt beside the mountain's corpse and said something only Ned could hear. When he rose, Ned marked a shade more steel in his friend's eyes. Victory, he realized, forged cruelty as well as glory. Edmure arrived at dusk with 500 retainers, banners furled, sword sheathed. He crossed to Robert's camp under flag of parley. Before tent doors emblazoned with crowned stag, Edmure bowed. "I come not to fight," he said, "but to pledge the Riverlands to a king who will not burn his people." Robert clasped Edmure's shoulder, voice thunder softened to gentle rain. "Then rise, Lord of Riverrun, and stand with us when we take back a city already doomed by its own ruler's fear." Ned watched, relief warring with sorrow. He thought of Caitlin, somewhere beyond Riverland's rivers, perhaps already hearing ravens of her family's choice. He longed for her presence, yet war still stretched ahead like a frozen lake. One wrong step and all would drown. In the Red Keep's highest tower, the king stood alone, gazing across a city cast in late afternoon glow, rooftops gleaming like copper coins. Far off, the horizon shimmered, a thin line of smoke perhaps, or maybe only summer haze. Ares stroked his beard, each motion plucking loose gray hairs. "The rivers betrayed," he murmured to no one, "and so the rivers will burn." Behind him, a gaunt pyromancer waited, robes the sickly green of wildfire. In his hands he cradled a small bronze key wrought with dragon wings. "It is done, your grace," the alchemist whispered, as though afraid of his own words. Ares accepted the key, held it to light, and smiled. Slow, secret, tender. Below, bells tolled for vespers. Children laughed in markets where sweet plums stained their fingers. Sailors haggled at wharfs for cargo of summer wine. None knew the doom sealed within a simple bronze key. He slipped it into his sleeve, then spoke softly, lovingly. "Let the rebels come. Let the fish swim through fire. King's Landing shall be my pyre, and the world will remember Ares, who turned rivers to glass." The pyromancer bowed. In his mind, he imagined green flames crawling like ivy through stone, swallowing towers, consuming archives, cooking flesh. The thought thrilled him, and far below, the Blackwater's slow tide lapped gently at pilings, ignorant of the inferno promised in its name. Night settled over Robert's camp. Stars blinked like new-forged coins hammered to life from cold darkness. Fires crackled. Soldiers sang bawdy verses. Wounded groaned softly while maesters worked, and Ned Stark sat in a tent writing lists of dead. Across the table, John Aaron marked strategies on sheepskin. Edmure spoke with Mal Lister and Blackwood about ferrying grain faster. Brinden sharpened his sword, each rasp an oath that would never dull. Robert strode in, fresh from visiting sentries. He placed a tattered crimson cloak on the table, the mountain's blood-spattered mantle, and said, "Tomorrow we cross. We end this before Ares can scorch half the realm." Ned lifted weary eyes. "The walls are thick, and wildfire thicker still."
Roberès le Grand.
"Then we batter the gates and drown the fire in river water. Or we die trying." He looked at each friend, each lord. "But I will not spend another night dreaming of Lyanna chained in that madman's castle." nor will you, Ned, nor any child of river, vale, or storm. We ride for King's Landing at dawn." The assembled lords assented, yet Ned sensed fear rippling beneath. He remembered his father's voice. A cautious man leaves a bridge back across a stream. Yet Robert would burn the bridge behind him as readily as Ares would burn the city before him. Two fires, one birthright. Outside the tent, the Red Fork's dark waters slid beneath moonlight, silent, secret. Fish leapt at gnats, breaking the surface for a heartbeat, then vanishing deeper. Rivers, Ned reflected, always chose their path in the end. Tomorrow they would bear men and horses down current, toward walls of red stone and secrets kindled in green flame. He folded his list of dead, tucked it inside his cloak, and stood. The chill night kissed his beard with hoarfrost. He breathed deep of river air, loam, moss, distant wood smoke, and knew none of it would smell the same once wildfire touched the wind. He whispered a prayer to the old gods for every soul in reach of dragonfire. Then he tightened his cloak, set hand on sword pommel, and walked to find sleep, though he feared dreams would offer only visions of rivers burning emerald beneath a crown of ash. The autumn sun slipped beneath a veil of smoke as Robert's host broke camp at first light, carts creaking under barrels of grain and the weight of victory. Dew still glittered on spear points when vanguards splashed through the shallowest ford of the Red Fork, the river's chill biting up calves and numbing shattered shins alike. Behind a screen of blackwood longbowmen, the foot slogged east, banners of stag, wolf, falcon, and trout marching side by side for the first time in memory. War horses churned mud into a sucking paste that swallowed the hooves of lighter geldings. Leather-booted squires cursed each step but pressed on, for no man wished to be the one who arrived late to the final reckoning. Robert rode at the head, cloak pinned with the ruby antler brooch Renly had once filched from a Dornish envoy and gifted him on his name day. Wind tugged hair from the crude ribbon that bound it, whipping black strands across cheeks ruddy with cold and excitement. Each mile consumed brought the scent of salt stronger. The Blackwater Bay summoned them like a trumpeting kraken. Word raced ahead of the army, borne by ravens, whispers, and traitor hearts. Robert Baratheon comes. The Storm Lord rides beneath a crown of river steel. The Riverlands bend. The North howls for vengeance. And with each tavern rumor, Ares' servants grew more frantic, scouring hamlets for conscripts while pyromancers vanished into cellars deep beneath the Red Keep. At dusk on the fourth day, they reached the smoking ruins of Hayford above the rolling Kingsroad. Charred timbers jutted like broken ribs through embers still faintly glowing. A small girl with singed hair knelt in the dirt, rocking the cold body of a dog whose throat had been slit. Brynden Blackfish dismounted to offer water. She flinched, eyes owl-wide. When she spoke, it was a torn whisper. Kingsmen came at dawn, took what hens they found, demanded grain, set torches when her father had none to give. Robert's knuckles whitened on his hammer haft. He sent Edric Storm, bastard in all but name yet beloved as a nephew, into the ashes to bury the dog and any found dead that night. 24 shallow graves later, silence draped the campfire ring like a funeral shroud. Even the bawdiest of soldiers kept drink quiet. The crackle of pine logs sounded sacrilege against the hush. Ned Stark lingered beside a smoldering beam, its char flaking to reveal pale with still smelling of sap. He remembered Brandon laughing in winter sunlight, remembered Lyanna's shriek of delight chasing her brother across the snow. His fury gathered slow but relentless, like ice forming on a river at nightfall. When Robert knelt across from him, elbows propped atop Hammerhead, Ned spoke first. "They will burn every farm between here and the capital." Robert gazed into flame as though reading prophecy.
No.
"They will try." He reached into embers, drew out a fistful of ash, and let it trickle through fingers. "Madness is brittle, Ned. It snaps when struck hard enough. There are children in that city," Ned said. "If wildfire is loosed, then we cut the serpent's head before he can strike." Robert's voice had the finality of a slammed gate. He rose and strode away, calling for Stannis to plan night scouts. Ned let the ember glow die on his boots and stood long after, watching sparks drift skyward like souls seeking gentler gods. To the west, Edmure Tully rode with Mallister outriders along the river road, scouring hedgerows for bandits drawn by chaos. A drizzle clung to daylight, making red clay paths slick. Every mile cost lives as exhausted horses snapped forelegs in unseen holes. Yet Edmure refused halt. Riverrun's banners now flew beside wolf and stag, but he half feared waking to find them scissored down by some lingering loyalist. Each dawn he walked lines of tents, offering jests and quiet counsel, mindful that courage became brittle when yoked to regret. Soldiers who had faced their own kin at Fairmarket trudged with haunted eyes. He visited firesides, praised bravery, repeated that those who laid down arms at King's Landing would be spared. Whether that mercy would matter if wildfire swallowed street and palace, he dared not consider. On the sixth evening, as storm clouds frothed over the rolling hills of the Crownlands, a rider in torn crimson approached beneath a ragged white flag.
Seros velguent, gaunt beneath battered plate, dismounted wearily.
His voice rasped from thirst. Rhaegar Targaryen wished parley with the rebel leaders. Alone, near the ruins of Summerhall, under hush of secrecy lest spies poison the attempt. Robert spat when the name was uttered, yet Jon Arryn urged caution. Rhaegar was never Aerys's madness, the Arryn Lord argued. Perhaps he seeks to end bloodshed. End it with what? Robert snarled. Another pretty song? A crown made of parchment promises? Yet Ned's gaze held Robert's, and Robert relented. They would ride Robert, Ned, Edmure, and Jon, flanked by chosen guards sworn to kill them at need rather than allow capture. Brynden remained to guide the army toward the Blackwater, instructed to advance on the capital only if the company returned by the third day's sundown. "Polish your sword," Robert told him before leaving. "Either I shall bring peace back like a bridal veil, or I'll want it gleaming to cut through lion, dragon, and treacherous trout alike." Brynden offered a half-smile. "It shall gleam, your grace." He watched their party vanish into rain-thick dusk, the storm's first rumble shaking the horizon. Only then did he turn to relish one small mercy. King's Landing lay but 60 leagues ahead. A long march, yet shorter than the gulf already closed between memory and the world they once knew. Summerhall's ruins breathed damp secrets when moonlight spilled between storm cloud rifts. Ivy strangled cracked marble, and pools of stagnant water mirrored the shattered archways where once princes had danced. Robert dismounted on worn cobbles, cloak plastered to his shirt by relentless drizzle. Lightning flared, revealing a slender figure cloaked in black beside the fragmented doorway of a collapsed tower. No guards flanked him. His sword, unbelted, rested upright in mud, ruby pommel glistening. Rhaegar Targaryen inclined his head with courtly grace to the four lords approaching. Close, the shadows peeled away to show hollows beneath his silver hair, cheekbones stark, eyes darker than memory. Rainwater slicked the fine mail beneath his cloak, and Ned could not help but recall the tourney at Harrenhal, when this same prince had placed a crown of winter roses in Lyanna's lap. That memory burned colder than the night wind. Jon Arryn spoke courtesy first, but Rhaegar stepped nearer Robert with an urgency that ignored protocol. "My father's city stands on the brink of disaster," he said, voice lilting, exhaustion woven through each syllable. "If wildfire is loosed, tens of thousands will die. I have tried to restrain him, but his fear has eaten him whole." Robert folded massive arms. "Where was this fretful conscience when your men butchered Rickard Stark, strangled Brandon with a burning cord? Where was it when you—" "I never ordered their deaths," Rhaegar interrupted, pain flickering across his face. "I was in the south then, searching for a prophecy," Ned finished, bitterness edging each word. "Searching for a cryptic tune while our families perished." Rhaegar, our closed eyes briefly, rain streaking lashes. "I have regrets deeper than any pyre, yet regret cannot reclaim what is done. I can only offer remedy for what may yet be spared." He drew a scroll from inside cloak folds, wax seal broken, creases worn. "I hold the command of the City Watch still loyal to me. Aerys trusts Goldcloaks sworn long to Targaryen. They would yield to my orders if I reclaim the gatehouses. Give me 3 days. Draw your army no closer than the Blackwater Rush. I will seize the city, arrest my father, and open the gates to you peacefully. We can convene a great council and decide the realm's future without wildfire or sack." Rain hammered Robert's hair into devilish twists. He said nothing for a long moment. Wind whistled through jagged stone like distant pipes. At last he laughed, harsh and ragged. "You think I will wait?" He swung the warhammer from shoulder, head thudding against sodden turf. Each minute Lina languishes somewhere inside those walls, abused or hidden. Every night children burn in farmhouses lit by your father's soldiers. 3 days? You had 3 years while your sire turned pyres into thrones. Rhaegar met the Stormlord's fury with weary sadness. If you storm those gates, you give Aerys only cause to send the key to the pyromancers. I have seen the casks, beneath the September, beneath the Dragon Pit, even beneath Flea Bottom's brothels. Some rest at the very base of the city walls. One spark. Every man, woman, and child within a league of Maegor's holdfast turns to ash and glass. Robert's knuckles whitened on leather grip. Ned placed a quiet hand upon his arm, feeling muscle quiver beneath soaked wool. In the hush, Edmure studied the prince. No arrogance remained, only desperation. Memories of Catelyn's hopeful letters flickered behind his eyes. If peace could be won without more orphaned small folk, Jon Arryn asked, "Suppose we grant 3 days. What proof have we that your plan can succeed?" Rhaegar unslung leather satchel, drawing forth a small bronze key identical to the one held by the pyromancer. "This turns the drawbar, locking the vault where Aerys keeps the wildfire keys and his private guard of alchemists. I possess more within the city. If I reach them first, the casks remain sealed." He extended it toward Robert. "Hold this. If I fail, you know at least one vault remains beyond his grasp." Robert stared at the key like a viper, yet accepted, stowing it in belt pouch. 3 days then, he grunted. "At dawn on the 4th, I march. If your banners have not replaced the red dragon by then, I smash the gates, burn the keep myself if I must, and wring your father's neck with my own hands." Rhaegar bowed slightly. 3 days. He returned to horse and rode into night without escort, cloak trailing like tattered crow wings. Lightning flared thrice before his silhouette finally vanished. Brynden Blackfish received word of the accord 2 nights later by swift rider and found himself adrift between oath and suspicion. The army rested on shallow ridges above the King's Road. Camps stretched like a ragged necklace of dim coals. He summoned captains near his pavilion, lit only by a single hooded lantern. They listened as he relayed Robert's command to wait 3 days. Some muttered relief. Others fretted that idle men bred mischief. But none doubted the Blackfish's will. He dismissed them with orders for silent readiness. Patrols doubled, hearth fires banked low against spies spotting numbers in the dark. Alone, Brynden paced, chain shirt creaking. He trusted Rhaegar's honor more than most. Still, he had patrolled King's Landing long enough to know Goldcloak swayed with coin, fear, and rumor. A single whisper that Rhaegar colluded with traitors would see him cut down by his own men. And Aerys's paranoia sharpened daily. Perhaps the prince underestimated what madness could unleash. Unable to sleep, Brynden saddled his fastest courser, donned a plain traveler's cloak, and slipped from camp at moonset with 2 scouts. He meant to ride ahead, to reach the southern shore of Blackwater by dawn's gray and search out smugglers' inlets where ravens could not see. He would watch the city for signals. Goldcloaks shifting posts, gates doubling sentries, smoke rising from pyromancer forges. Signs of success or betrayal. They passed abandoned farms where scarecrows sagged like hanged men, crossbeams broken. Twice they skirted crown patrols dragging conscripts toward the walls, and Brynden's bowstring thrummed soft justice. The dead left where they fell might stir suspicion, but dawn would see hosts collide whichever choice fate delivered. By the time sun broke crimson over Blackwater's wide mouth, Brynden knelt atop a scrub-choked bluff overlooking the river's estuary. There loomed King's Landing, grand and rotten. The walls traced the peninsula like a crooked crown. Smoke curled from chimneys, but nothing seemed amiss. To the east, Gulls spun above the city's dank harbor, wings flashing white in morning's rose light. He scanned gatehouses through spyglass, seeking new banners. Only crimson three-headed dragons flapped in mild breeze. His gut tightened, day one already passing and no sign. He nodded to riders to maintain watch shifts and slipped back into low brush where a hidden path wound down to water's edge. If the city burned, better to see the first green flash and race word north so Robert's host might brace for hellfire. Across the water narrow crenels dotted the mud gate towers. He fancied he saw gold gleaming on helms, though at such distance perhaps only sunlight. A horn echoed, from inside or from some camp beyond the east bank, he could not tell. The sound died, swallowed by screech of gulls. Inside King's Landing chaos simmered beneath a veneer of routine. Lord Carlton Chelsted, master of coin, scurried along damp corridor beneath the red keep clutching ledger rolls heavy with feverish numbers. Grain stores dwindling, smith wages unpaid, Crown Mint issuing copper chips adulterated with tin. By midday he presented these to Grand Maester Pycelle, beard quivering, insisting famine must be addressed. Pycelle dabbed ink on signature lines and murmured agreement but offered no coin. Treasury coffers, he whispered, served one purpose now, securing wildfire casks. In the yard below, Sir Jamie drilled fresh squires in shield wall tactics, though his thoughts drifted like pollen. Rieger had vanished once more, slipping out before dawn. Rumor claimed he visited Septons to confess. Others insisted he planned to crown his newborn son. Jamie's mind, however, returned to the key he glimpsed dangling from the pyromancer's girdle days ago. Another of bronze, dragon-winged. How many keys? How many vaults? If the wildfire stores lay hidden even to the Kingsguard, they could not guard against them. That afternoon, the Queen was taken by sudden pains and forced to bed by midwives. Jamie remained outside her chamber, hearing muffled moans. Riella's belly looked to burst at any breath. The babe stirred restless inside, as though sensing ash on the wind. Jamie knew nothing of birthing but recognized fear. Each cry from behind that door scraped his nerves raw. He imagined flames racing along hallway tapestries. Imagined the door handle growing too hot to touch. Elsewhere, the city watch patrolled uneasy streets. Commander Morris Mantries, a loyalist appointed after Bryndon's desertion, ordered nightly curfews, citing rumors of northern cutthroats seeking entrance. Goldcloaks broke up gatherings at taverns. A man singing of Robert's hammer lost 3 teeth and half a finger. Yet beneath their cloaks many guards stashed moontea vials and cloth badges bearing the black fish, tokens delivered by covert couriers in the alleys. Allegiance wavered with each watch change. The city felt like a cask overfilled, a jolt away from eruption. Beyond the walls, beneath the wooden pilings of a minor ferry pier south of the city, Davos of Flea Bottom, smuggler turned whisperer, waited alongside a skiff bobbing in oily tide. He had been Bryndon's eyes in the capital before the watch changed hands. Now he risked rope or pyre by bearing messages. At twilight of day one, a boy of perhaps 14 emerged, cloak patched, eyes darting. He pressed a strip of parchment into Davos's soot-stained palm. No gates opened, gold cloaks restless, prince yet unseen, walls thick with archers. Food riots threaten. Davos rode across water shimmering violet, carrying the slip to a thicket where Bryndon's scout awaited. Sparrowhawks soared overhead as the message flew north. Bryndon read by lantern, frowning. Dawn of day 2 brought no change. He sent Davos back with silver stags and a terse question. Prince alive? Wildfire keys. The day passed under steady rain that turned road dust to red slop. Troops in Robert's rear camp grew irritated, dice games spinning into knife fights. Edmure found himself adjudicating petty quarrels over stolen rations. Each hour wasted gnawed at morale. That night Bryndon convened officers. Prepare siege lines quietly, he ordered. Earthworks shaped by dawn but keep torches masked. If day 3 shows no sign, we must be ready to move by order of dusk rather than dawn. The king's pyre waits for no man. Men nodded grimly. Shovels bit earth by starlight, muffled by damp sod. Inside the red keep on the second night, Rhaegar returned through a postern gate bearing dust and hollow eyes. Jaime met him in the outer yard, rain-stippling steel surcoat. "My prince," he said softly. "The queen labors early. The maesters." "I know." Rhaegar's gaze drifted over dark ramparts. "I felt it." They walked the torchlit corridor where banners sagged heavy with moisture. Rhaegar stopped before a spiral stair, resting hand on cold stone. "When the babe is born, see her hidden, far from here." "Her?" Jaime echoed. "Daughter or son, it matters little. No child is safe where wildfire sleeps." He pressed a folded parchment into Jaime's gauntlet. "Take this to Ser Gerald Hightower at Dragonstone if doom falls on the city. Swear to me, Jaime." Jaime looked at the parchment, wax sealed with the sigil of three-headed dragon crowned by comet. He swallowed. "I swore to protect you and yours, my prince. But the king swore I once to protect the realm," Rhaegar murmured. "Today I mean to." He ascended the stair, leaving Jaime with the taste of copper in his mouth, uncertain whether it was dread or the rain trickling between lip and helm. Day 3 bloomed beneath a sullen sky, clouds bruised purple. Robert's army waited along hedgerows 1 league from the walls, siege towers crudely assembled from orchard timbers, catapults hidden beneath burlap. Robert himself paced a path worn in mud, eyes locked on distant battlements. Ned joined him at noon, offering watered wine. Robert refused. "How long, Ned?" "Sunset nears." His voice held more sorrow than anger. Ned looked toward the city. He imagined a man he did not know clutching keys, threading palace corridors beset by suspicion. But duty to his sister, to the men who followed him, weighed heavier than hope. "Perhaps another hour," he said. "If no banner changes, we move." Thunder growled distantly, though the clouds still threatened rain more than storm. Edmure rode between rear companies, instructing engineers to lash final braces on a rickety siege ram shaped like a leaping trout. Soldiers laughed at the sight. He permitted it, for laughter steadied hands more than prayer. Yet inside his breast a stone lodged. If they breached King's Landing and looters rampaged, the Riverlands would share guilt with wolf and stag. He resolved to guide vanguard into the city, to hold streets around bakeries and wells, to keep small folk safe at least on the riverbank side. Brynden returned from his lookout by ferry in late afternoon. He dismounted beside Robert without ceremony. "All quiet," he reported. "Gold cloaks at Mudgate look restless, but banners unchanged." Robert exhaled like a blacksmith's bellows. He hefted hammer, observing ridges where men awaited signal flags. "Form them," he ordered. Horns repeated the word down the line. Siege towers creaked forward, oxen lowing. Drums thudded hollow heartbeat across fields. Then, as if jerked by unseen strings, every banner atop the mud gate sagged. Moments later, a new flag rose, white field quartered by crimson stripe, bearing the crowned stag of Baratheon entwined with silver trout. Even at distance, the emblem shone fresh-painted, fabric still damp. A hush swept Robert's ranks. Soldiers blinked, uncertain. Brynden snatched spyglass, cursing under breath, then laughed, a rasp of amazement. "Look," he instructed. Robert peered. Atop the parapet, men in gold cloaks over chainmail knelt before a taller figure draped in dark cloak. Rhaegar, unmistakable by silver hair, though the helm he wore bore antlers. The antlers glinted, and Ned realized Robert's own helm. Beside Rhaegar, another man brandished a torch. He touched flame to the last dragon banner still fluttering. Silk ignited, curling into blackened strip. Gold cloaks saluted. A roar rolled from the city. Cheers, bells, horns. Gates shuddered, then opened outward. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Robert bellowed laughter loud enough to scare crows from hedges. He swung hammer high. "Onward!" he cried, voice cracking with exultation. "The city welcomes its rightful king." Yet even as ranks surged, he turned to Brynden, voice low. "Tell the men, no sack, no rape, no torches. Anyone caught harming a child answers to my hammer." Brynden nodded and spurred ahead to relay. Edmure galloped to his own lines. Ned lingered a moment, heart pounding. Something about the sudden shift gnawed, too tidy. He kicked his horse after Robert, trusting gods to watch the rear. Inside the mud gate courtyard, Rhaegar greeted Robert with rigor of ceremony despite fresh-won bruises on cheek. They clasped for arms, neither man smiling. Respect lay heavy as plate mail between them. Gold cloaks lined ramparts, most kneeling, some still wavering. Robert searched the prince's eyes. The key! Rhaegar drew 3 bronze keys from belt, placed them in Robert's gauntlet. The vault beneath the Great September, the one beneath the Guildhall of the Alchemists, and the one beneath Maegor's Holdfast. My men secure them, Robert exhaled, relief and doubt mingling. And the king, Rhaegar's jaw tightened. Maegor's Holdfast, he refuses surrender. Jaime Lannister remains at his side with 4 Kingsguard. The other 3 stand with me now. Robert turned to Ned. You lead the city guard to the Holdfast gate. I will parley once more, hammer in hand this time. They spurred through crowded streets, thrown into jubilant delirium. Small folk hurled petals, poured wine from windows, chanted the Storm Lord's name. Yet amid cheers, Ned glimpsed faces pale with fear, children clutching mother skirts. Shops shuddered. Word of peace raced faster than fear, but fear outran trust. At the outer yard of the Red Keep they paused. Iron portcullis stood half-lowered, toothed edge biting stone. Lannister men-at-arms held the barbican. A herald in crimson surcoat stepped forward, voice trembling. Lord Tywin Lannister approaches the city from the west. He requests entry in the king's name to suppress rebellion. Robert barked a savage laugh. Tell the lion his claws come too late. The stag already rules these walls. The herald fled. Rhaegar's brows knitted. If my father hears Tywin has turned, he may yet. Robert spurred past, ascending the serpentine path to Maegor's Holdfast. Ned followed with 100 northerners bristling spears. As they neared the gatehouse arch, a Kingsguard stepped forward. Jaime in gleaming armor smeared with soot. Halt! He commanded, though sword tip quivered. Behind him barred doors boomed. Within, Ned heard shouted orders. Robert reined in, studying the young lion's haunted gaze. Kingslayer yet? He jeered. Jaime swallowed but only said, Her Grace begs safe passage for the babe soon to be born. There will be no babes if wildfire takes this castle, Robert replied. Stand aside and help us end this madness. Inside the yard, a shriek rose, Riella's labor pain. Jaime flinched. Ned saw tears gather unshed. At length Jaime lowered his sword. He gestured to 2 guards above, who cranked the winch, dropping the first bar. Yet before would fully lifted, a blast shook the ground. A muffled, roaring detonation from somewhere lower in the keep. Dust billowed from arrow slits. Pigeons burst skyward. Wildfire, Ned's blood iced. Jaime lunged for the winch, shouting to raise bars faster. Robert powered through the gap, hammer sweeping guards aside. They raced into the stone belly of the keep, corridors flickering with torch flame as smoke crept along ceiling. At the base of a tower they found 2 charred corpses, pyromancers by green-crusted robes, keys still smashed between skeletal fingers. One vault had been opened, cask stabbed, but blast incomplete. Fire licked walls with emerald tongues. Thick smoke clogged air. Robert grabbed a burning torch, hurled it at creeping green puddle. Flame raced toward unruptured casks. Out! Rhaegar cried, dragging Ned's arm. Jaime and 2 Kingsguards hefted a broken door as shield, herding them back. Emerald fire chased their heels, exploding into roar as they dove through archway. Pressure threw them sprawling onto courtyard flagstones, ears ringing. A plume of green death spouted from windows high above, staining dusk sky. The blast rattled gates, cracked towers. Robert rose coughing, hammer lost. He snatched a discarded pike for balance. Ares, he rasped. They charged across collapsing bridge linking tower to central keep. Inside the throne room, the air reeked of scorched silk. Iron throne shimmered under torchplay, barbs dripping molten steel from heat of blast. Upon its steps lay Ares, royal robes aflame, clawing at half-melted crowns. Jamie stood over him, blade red to hilt. Green tongues still licked corners, but no cask here. Perhaps Ares had poured wildfire on himself in final frenzy. Robert halted, chest heaving, staring at corpse. Kingslayer indeed. Jamie's gaze hollow, he stepped aside. He had the pyromancers ready to ignite every jar. I stopped him. Rieger approached slowly, tears mingled with ash streaks. He knelt, closed his father's eyes with gloves. Sign of respect or pity Ned could not countenance. Robert turned away, surveying devastation. Tapestries burning, marble shattered. Outside horns blared, Tywin's forces at the gate. But green smoke still rose from lower halls. If more casks ignited, none would survive. Rieger rose. We must seal every vault or drag casks to the river.
Ned nodded.
My men know cellars. We'll flood tunnels from the storm drains. But it must be quick. Hours blurred. Bucket lines from wells, chains of men rolling casks along corridors, engineers opening sluice grates to Blackwater's tide. Edmure led rivermen through catacombs where ghost fires lingered, dousing embers, shouting orders with voice grown hoarse. Jamie carried Riella to a sept in the yard where midwives toiled. When the babe came, a girl wailing shrill as city bells, he swaddled her in a cloak ripped from fallen white cloak, tears streaking cheeks. He handed her to Ned's Lady Barbary Riswell for safekeeping until dawn. By first light, smoke thinned. The city lived. Green scorch marks marred streets where stray jars had erupted, but wildfire's hurricane had been stemmed. Tywin's lion banners entered through gates now manned by Blackfish veterans. Seeing Robert enthroned in the ruined hall, he bent knee with polished grin, pledging fealty to King Robert Baratheon. Robert accepted, though his eyes tracked Jamie's ever. Why move thereafter? That afternoon the new king held council in the Tower of the Hand, ironically safest chamber left intact. Rieger, still armored, offered to leave Westeros in exile with family if Robert wished, fearing lords would not abide his survival. Robert surprised all. He clasped the prince's forearm. You spared the city, he said. You gave me my crown without need of sack. Stay. Help me rebuild what your father broke. Murmurs rippled. Jon Arryn's face softened. Ned exhaled relief. Yet Edmure noted Tywin's lips tighten. The lion had counted on easier prey, perhaps. The council adjourned with tasks. Grain ration repairs, city watches reorganized, memorial dead counted. That night torches ringed the courtyard of Maegor's Holdfast, where victims of Ares's last madness lay in rows, common and noble alike. Ned knelt where Brandon's remains, released at last, rested. He whispered a vow to carry Lyanna home. Nearby Edmure found Brynden leaning on parapet. Rivers chose at last, Edmure said quietly. Brynden chuckled, wiping soot. Aye, and nearly boiled. Can they heal? Rivers erase scars with time, Brynden answered. Their memory is silt on seabeds, but those living along them remember. We must guide them. Edmure looked over city roofs where dawn's first gold touched blackened tiles. Bells tolled not for death but for new king's peace. Above, smoke faded into pale blue. He pictured tumbling rivers at Riverrun, trout leaping as always. Perhaps children would fish again without fear of levees or dragonfire. The thought steadied him. Within the yard, Robert emerged, hair trimmed, a simple circlet of bronze upon brow. He surveyed the still smoking skyline. Ned stepped beside him. The storm is over, Ned said. Robert's gaze lingered on distant dragon pit ruins, now cracked and silent. Storms always return, Ned. We build stronger walls between. Ned nodded, though he wondered if walls ever stood long against rivers and time. He thought of Catelyn waiting somewhere among camp tents outside the walls, perhaps already hearing that her sister's husband lived and her own betrothal shifted like river silt. He yearned to ride out, to tell her tales of courage and regret, to say the realm yet breathed. Soon, he promised himself, rivers ever flow to sea, but hearts must find harbor first. Far above, fume-thin sky cleared to reveal a sun brilliant gold, as though all the realm's lost coin had been hammered into one gleaming disk. Its warmth kissed broken stone, battlefield mud, ash-streaked cheeks, and the newborn babe sleeping in sept shadows, proving light could unfurl even over a city just spared from emerald night. And beneath that dawn, houses once riven by choice, wolf and stag, trout and falcon, gathered to mend a kingdom born upon the fickle yet forgiving currents of its myriad rivers. Night bled into a reluctant dawn across King's Landing. The sky bruised purple and gold while columns of jittery smoke drifted like ghosts above rooftops still slick with dew. The air carried a sour tang of smoldered tapestries and the copper of spilled blood. But the worst of the wildfire stench had been scoured away by bucket chains that labored until their arms trembled. Inside the makeshift infirmary of the great September's outer cloister, men and women lay three to a pallet, bandaged limbs pale as winter branches. Septas moved among them with hushed prayers, and Maester Pycelle, beard singed in patches, fussed over inventory ledgers of dwindling poppy milk. Beyond the tall, cracked doors, King Robert Baratheon convened his first full council upon benches hauled in from the destroyed throne room, refusing the grandeur of any hall still reeking of Targaryen madness. He sat at a rough-hewn table scarred by hammer blows where workers once shaped siege beams, the simple bronze circlet dark against his uncombed hair. Jon Arryn kept minutes with quill and ink pilfered from the Master of Coin's ravaged offices, every scratch audible in the hush. Ned Stark stood opposite, cloak streaked with soot, eyes weighted by exhaustion yet keen. Edmure Tully and Brynden flanked him, rivermen leaning on spears to replace shattered pride. Rhaegar Targaryen, silver hair bound behind his neck, stood apart with arms folded, a visitor rather than a lord, though he bore two swords at hip. His own and the ancestral blade Blackfire, reclaimed from vaults Aerys had locked away. Tywin Lannister arrived late, crimson cloak unmarred, gold lion gleaming like new coin while the city still mourned. He entered without ceremony, yet every set of shoulders straightened as though a winter gale had swept through. He bowed to Robert, then to Jon Arryn, and finally to the room itself, acknowledging none too deeply. Only his eyes flicked once to Rhaegar, unreadable. Robert greeted him with a tired grunt. "I trust your men quarter peaceably outside the gates?" "Peaceably," Tywin said, voice mild. "Though peace is seldom cheap, your grace. The city's grain stores are afire, her defenders weary, and her merchants anxious. Coin will placate them faster than any decree." Robert waved a hand. "The treasury stands open to the realm's need. Whatever gold dragons ripe for melting remain, you'll find more use for them than my vaults did." Tywin inclined his head, but a faint narrowing of the eyes betrayed calculation. Ned caught the glance and felt unease stir like a hawk within his breast. Beside him Brynden murmured under breath, "Lions do not favor empty larders. They'll hunt elsewhere." Robert's fist thumped table. "First order, we honor the small folk. All able-bodied men dismissed by Aerys' purge shall be offered work cleaning rubble and rebuilding walls. Pay them from the crown's coin, double for any father who lost kin to wildfire." He looked to Tywin. "Make it so." Tywin bowed again, words sheathed like daggers in velvet. "As you command." Jon Arryn set the quill down. "We must also address succession." He eyed both Robert and Rhaegar. Few precedents cover the living overthrow of a mad king while his heir yet draws breath. He did not voice what hung heavy, which crown sat firmer, one forged of rebellion or one welded by birthright. Robert inhaled slowly, gaze never leaving the silver-haired prince. "I fought for vengeance and for Lyanna, not to polish an iron chair." His shoulders rolled like a bull's before charge. "But the city cheered me as king when I broke its gates. And God's witness, Rhaegar handed me the keys to its salvation." His stare sharpened. "Speak your claim if you have one, prince. Do it now or hold peace." Rhaegar lifted chin, pale eyes reflecting torchlight. "My claim lies with my children. Yet the realm needs healing before coronets. My daughter Aelora lies swaddled in a sept niche while her mother still bleeds. My son Aegon remains at Dragonstone with Elia. Their lives mean more to me than any throne." His voice softened. I relinquish my succession to the Great Council, provided their safety is guaranteed. A ripple murmured through the chamber. Tywin's nostrils flared with something nearing respect. Edmure exhaled relief he'd not known he held. Robert stared a beat longer, then extended a broad hand. Then let us see them safe. After, the lords may speak. Their palms met with the quiet thunder of history rearranging itself. By midday horns announced proclamation. 3 days of truce for all houses to send envoys to attend a great council. Ravens soared from rookery lofts, carried tidings across Westeros faster than rumor. The crown had changed, but peacefully, miraculously. In streets below, small folk gathered before crier stands, some weeping when they learned their bread rations would resume. Others spat at mention of dragons, but few took arms after so many nights of terror. Ned Stark wasted no hour. He assembled a guard of 20 northern spears, Edric Storm, and 2 grim-faced crannogmen led by Howland Reed who had arrived on the dawn tide. They rode south out the Dragon Gate before sun touched zenith, pursuit of rumors whispering from the Dornish marches. A tower, hidden in red mountains, where Rhaegar had secreted a Stark maiden. On the King's Road, Ned spoke little, jaw clenched as though iron bands bound it. Edric attempted jests. They bounced off Ned's gloom like pebbles against wall ice. Even Howland's reed-haunting songs fell quiet after the second night when Ned stood watch to north-facing winds, refusing cloak despite mountain chill. The party reached the base of a butte on the dawn of the 4th day. There, half buried in dawn haze, stood the Tower of Joy, pale stone rising like a shard of moonlight stabbed into crimson rock. An eagle circled high overhead, shrieking as though echoing Ned's own heart. At the tower foot 7 figures in silver plate stood sentinel even now. 3 Kingsguard remained loyal beyond reason. Gerald Hightower, Oswell Went, and young Lewin Martell, eyes dark as desert nights. Ned dismounted, leaving sword in scabbard but pulling glove from hand. "I come for my sister," he called, voice reverberating like horn blast between stones. Ser Gerald stepped forward, white cloak shredded and dust-streaked but still proud. "Your sister lies within, my lord, but she is not a prisoner. We swore an oath to guard her and the babe she carries." Ice rumbled free of scabbard. "Stand aside." Howland and Edric flanked him, but the other Kingsguard drew blades likewise, steel flashing. The quiet just before steel rang seemed to stretch a lifetime, broken only by a cry from above, the faint wail of an infant. Ned's resolve wavered. He took a step, but Ser Lewin's sword blocked path. "Blood only begets more orphans," the Dornish knight said. Inside the tower, Lyanna Stark leaned against a shuttered window, hair damp with sweat, arms wrapped around a newborn barely a moon old. She heard the clash of arguments below and closed eyes, tears leaking. Every breath since her early labor had rattled like frost-laced glass in lungs still tender from fever. She feared to stand lest knees betray her. When the door creaked open, she glanced, expecting Elia Martell, her companion these last weeks, to bring watered milk. Instead, the boy Edric Storm strode in, eyes wide at seeing daughter of Winterfell alive. Behind him followed Ned, face gray with shock and joy colliding. She tried to speak, but the child stirred, mewling. Ned crossed the room in 3 strides, arms trembling before he dared touch her. "Lyanna," he whispered, and her name cracked in his throat as though the north wind spoke it. She managed a smile. "Is it over?"
Ned swallowed.
"Aerys is dead. Robert wears a crown he never sought." His gaze darted to the infant. "And this?" Lyanna lifted the bundle. "Rhaegar's son," she said softly. "He named him Jaehaerys." Tears slid down her cheeks. "He swore they'd be safe. He swore." Ned drew breath heavy as plate. "The realm hates dragons, even babes." He remembered whispers of Rhaegar's children in King's Landing, safe on Dragonstone by chance. But Tywin's men had marched with rumor already forging crimes undone. He felt weight of 1,000 expectations settle. "We will find a way." Outside, swords remained sheathed, for word reached that Eddard Stark would escort sister and child north under truce. The Kingsguard conferred, finally yielding as Ser Gerald pressed fingers to temple like one conceded to tide. Lewin Martell told Ned quietly, "Take them. Tell Prince Rhaegar his children will need Dornish blood to stand by them." He removed the Dornish sun and spear brooch from cloak and pinned it beside the infant's swaddling, silent token of witness. Before noon the party rode north again, Lyanna weak but alive in a wagon cushioned with furs. Jaehaerys cooed at shifting clouds. Edric marveled at how tiny fingers grasped his thumb. Ned rode alongside, wondering how to bury truth beneath honor's veneer before rumors sprouted like weeds. In King's Landing, the Great Council convened beneath canvas pavilions in the new Courtyard of Swords, so named after laborers hammered melted throne barbs into nails to rebuild city gates. Lords swarmed like crows to feast. Arryn, Tully, Lannister, Stark, Tyrell, Greyjoy, Hightower, Royce, Mormont, Dane, Karstark, and lesser banners beyond count. Dorne sent Princess Elia in Rhaegar's stead, carrying letters to vouchsafe passage. Conspicuously absent was Walder Frey, who cited sudden malaise. Brynden Blackfish privately joked the old weasel nursed numbers not illness, counting which side yielded more boons. Robert addressed assembly from a wooden dais, words booming. "I did not choose this crown," he declared, "but I will wear it until the realm stands healed. No man or woman shall burn by dragon fire again. Let us forge laws that bind king and commoner alike." His fist thudded hard. "No child shall die for another's madness." Murmurs rippled. Bold talk, but how enforced? Then Rhaegar stepped forward, cloak plain, no sigil. He spoke of histories repeating when power lacked temperance, of dragons forging peace by fear until fear devoured them from within. He knelt before Robert. "I pledge fealty to House Baratheon, and in so doing relinquish my claim, that my children may live unbound by ancient sin." Shock shivered the council. Tywin's brows arched. Mace Tyrell's jowls quivered as he whispered to Olenna. Yet applause thundered from lesser lords who tasted relief. Robert clasped Rhaegar's shoulder. "Rise, Lord of Dragonstone, Keeper of Tides. Swear the walls of your island will never house wildfire nor treason, and your line remains." Rhaegar swore. Thus the bloodied wheel of dynasty cracked but did not turn. Next the council confronted Tywin's silent question. Lannister reward. Robert named him Hand of the King, an appointment that drew sharp breaths from Edmure and Brynden, but politically shored the realm's richest house. Yet Robert tempered the gift. "Lord Stark shall serve as my Lord Protector of the North and Master of Laws. Lord Arryn remains Lord Regent till I wed and sire issue." Tywin's smile stiffened, but he bowed. When talk turned to marriages, political mortar for fractured stones, Robert stunned again. He would wed Cersei Lannister as previously arranged by the late king. Tywin's smile thawed. The realm detected cunning. Lannister gold securing Baratheon rule. Yet Robert added a twist. Before year's end, Prince Rhaegar will take for bride Princess Elia anew, with Dragonstone recognized sovereign vassal. Dorne nodded satisfaction. He paused, voice heavier. "As for Lady Lyanna Stark, she lives." Gasps bloomed. "But her health is fragile. She returns north with her brother until spring thaws roads." He offered no more, sparing rumor from teeth. The council approved charters banning wildfire caches within city walls. Pyromancers would be relocated to isolated islets under watch of the Kingsguard. Varys, spider-thin, clapped softly at rear, his eyes glimmering like candlelight bent through tears. Of joy or calculation none could tell. With city affairs grinding forward, Robert rode for Storm's End with Stannis to celebrate sieges lifting and to mourn those lost. Rhaegar traveled to Dragonstone to retrieve his son and tend Elia's injuries from childbirth complications. Tywin remained in capital, draining vaults to flood streets with coin for labor and ensuring Lannister masons won lucrative contracts. The urban poor called it Lion's Charity. The small council called it necessary. Edmure oversaw river trade from Riverrun to capital, ordering barges to ferry lumber and fish. His crest flew above wharfs, earning cheers from dockhands who once spat at toll collectors. Brynden commanded the reformed City Watch, cloaks now crimson and blue, colors of clay and river, symbolizing new oath to protect, not oppress. He replaced corrupt captains, instituted night patrols of mixed Riverlanders and Stormlanders to break clique loyalties, and forbade torture pits beneath barracks. Catelyn Stark arrived with her father's funeral barge 2 moons later. Hoster had succumbed days after the council. Riverlords lined banks as torches reflected silver on black waters, singing dirges older than Undulls. Ned met her at river stairs, grief mirrored in each. They clasped hands. Warmth passed like summer sun across long winter. That night they wed in the godswood of the Red Keep under heart tree transplanted from Cracklaw Point decades prior. Robb Stark, their firstborn, would come a year later in Riverrun, heralding peace between river and north. Yet peace trembled. In the Vale, remnants of dragon loyalists, men who blamed Rhaegar's capitulation, plotted among mountain clans. On the Iron Islands, Balon Greyjoy bristled at news of restructured tax on salt wives, muttering sovereignty. In the Reach, Lord Paxter Redwine groused that Tyrell grain shipments prioritized the crown's rebuilding over island coffers. Varys whispered of Sel's words landing quietly at Gulltown, though none knew their master. Winter whispered too, long and creeping. Maesters predicted early snows. Stannis drilled royal fleet in Blackwater tides against threat of reavers. Davos, elevated to knight for smuggling onions during siege, pledged fast black ships to patrol stepstones. The king bantered merry at feasts but drank deeper each tourney. Cersei arrived wearing crimson silk lined with daggers of disdain for city's stench. She bore Robert twin boys within 2 years, though whispers claimed they favored green eyes of Lannister more than Baratheon blue. Lyanna regained strength in Winterfell's crisp air. She sat beneath Weirwood's nursing Jaehaerys, whose silver-black hair glinted like crow feathers dipped in moonlight. She wrote Robert a letter of gratitude that reached him one dawn when ale still soured tongue. He wept, startling Cersei into cool silence. Ned, protector of secrets, kept one close. He registered Jaehaerys at Winterfell as his ward, Jon Snow, mother undisclosed, to shield boy from those who would end dragon seeds. Rhaegar visited Winterfell once, under hooded cloak, to see son from distance while Lyanna watched behind shutter. They shared single moment, eyes meeting across courtyard where snow fell like feathers. He bowed wordless and left before dawn with Howland Reed escort. Lyanna's tears froze on lashes. 5 years slipped by. King's Landing shimmered again. Marble restored, markets bustling, Dragon Pit repurposed into council hall for new merchant guilds. Wildfire stocks had been ferried to islands off Duskendale, guarded by ironborn mercenaries sworn by contract not loyalty. Tywin's cunning. Let those who crave fire watch it far from kingdoms. Rhaegar's Dragonstone blossomed into haven for scholars, its libraries open to maesters. Songs of the summer of rebirth filled inns from Old Town to White Harbor. Yet shadows lengthened. Whispers emerged from north of Wall. Dead men walked in snow. At Storm's End ravens died mid-flight, talons blackened by unknown frost. In small council chamber, Maester Luwin presented cracked obsidian dagger found on shivering seashore. Ned felt chill deeper than memory then. On a bitter autumn night, Robert summoned his closest. Ned, Jon Arryn, Stannis, and Tywin. Torches guttered while wind howled. The king spoke of dire dreams. Wolves howling under bleeding stars, dragon boys with ice eyes, and a wall of blue flame devouring capital. He drank deep, yet fear cut soberness. Tywin scoffed at dream lore. Stannis pursed lips, thinking of fires lit by red priests in Dragonstone halls. Jon Arryn counseled vigilance at Eastwatch. Ned returned north that winter to strengthen Night's Watch with black-cloaked volunteers from river prisons. Brynden traveled with him, leaving City Watch to trusted captain. A queen's crown they passed Wildle. Ings frozen in positions of terror, as though frost giants had breathed upon them. Maester Aemon at Castle Black examined pale corpses bearing eyes milk-white but no sign of rot. Ned dispatched ravens south bearing shards of ice-dawn dread. Southron lords, comfortable by hearths of new prosperity, largely dismissed dire tidings. Robert promised aid but remained mired in hunts and the birthing of a third child, a golden-haired daughter. Tywin urged focus on trade disputes with bravos. Even Rhaegar, though sympathetic, pressed scholarly treatises rather than swords. Only Stannis began forging dragonglass into spearheads in Dragonstone for reasons he did not share. Meanwhile, in Riverrun, Edmure maintained river levee drills alongside new irrigation channels built by Tyrell engineers as goodwill. Trout leapt among sluice gates, symbol of plenty. Yet one dawn, scouts reported cell sails landing at salt pans, banners unknown. Edmure mustered riders. They found villages razed, small folk taken. Survivors whispered of spider-eyed men searching for infants with silver hair. Ned read the report at Winterfell and felt dusk settle in heart. He thought of Jon Snow chasing direwolf pups in yard. He penned urgent missives. One to Robert urging immediate royal investigation. Another to Rhaegar warning of threats to his blood. Ravens vanished into snow-laden sky. 3 sun nights later, on a road near Duskendale, Elia Martell's litter was ambushed. She survived with broken arm, but Aegon, now 6, disappeared. No ransom came. Dornish outriders scoured Stormlands in futile loops. Rhaegar sailed the narrow sea in grief-charged fury, seeking ships rumored under Golden Lion sigils. Rumors Tywin coldly denied. Court whispers licked flames. Talk that Baratheon crown tottered, that Lannisters plotted replacement with their blonde heir, that Dornish vengeance stirred. Streets where children once played birth quiet again. Wildfire Vault Islands saw guard numbers stripped, a cunning redeployment by unknown hand, leaving caches vulnerable. Varys glided through corridors like Wraith, too silent. Ned returned to capital as rivers thawed, summoned by Jon Arryn's faltering health. Jon whispered of seed and secrets, begged Ned to protect children not yet men. He died before dawn, leaving paper sealed with Arryn Falcon pressed into wax. Ned pocketed letter, unsure trust in any but honor. At the funeral, he caught Cersei speaking softly with Pycelle, mention of milk of the poppy measured thrice. He noted the queen's eldest, Joffrey, boasting cruelty in practice yard, golden hair bright under noon sun, eyes green as wildfire. The seed is strong, Jon's letter read when Ned finally broke it. But some seeds grow in poison. Robert sank into cups, bereft of friend. Tywin guided counsel. Taxes rose, coin lined the rocks vaults. Stannis fumed, voice unheard. Rhaegar remained at sea chasing rumors. On moonless night, Wildfire Island near Maidenpool exploded in green column visible from Storm's End to Harrenhal. Casks breached, watchers dead. Dockhands spoke of shadowy longship bearing Kraken sigil fleeing north under cloud of gulls. Balon Greyjoy's rebellion sparked days later. War drums again. Robert called banners, but numbers thin, winter harvests poor, lords wary of endless campaigns. Ned proposed negotiation with Ironborn. Tywin opposed. Cersei whispered to Robert, fanning old fury. The king set to sail leading fleet. Died bore hunting day before departure. Wounds suspiciously lacking gore. Wine had numbed senses. Kingdom fractured. Council named Joffrey king, Tywin regent. Ned objected, brandishing Arryn letter, citing bastardy. Cersei ordered arrest. Ned fled Red Keep aided by Brynden and City Watch still loyal. He reached Dragonstone with proof, seeking Rhaegar. Prince returned with vengeance, raised banners of Black Dragon on Sea of Storms, vowed to restore rightful rule and crush treachery. Thus rivers once healed churned crimson again. Edmure marshaled Tully spears, torn between vows to Robert's heirs and loyalty to sisters, and to truth Ned carried. Davos sailed ravens across seas carrying plea to Dorne. Join righteous cause or see children hunted. North, Lyanna watched snows deepen, clutching Jon's shoulders while direwolves howled beyond battlements. Sensing winter or war had come once more. She remembered promise Robert made. No child would die for madness. She prayed that promise still held weight, for she had seen madness wear many masks. Dragon, lion, even stag. Yet hope stirred, small and fierce, like fire beneath ice. In courtyard Jon practiced with wooden sword against Robb, laughter echoing against stone. Summer sun broke clouds, scattering light like shards of joy. Lyanna believed light could pierce again. If men remembered rivers change, yes, but always seek the sea and carry life with them. Somewhere far north of Wall, an ancient heart pulsed beneath ice, and blue eyes opened, hearing distant drums of mortal war, yet caring nothing for thrones or banners, only for the beating heat of living blood. Winter marched inexorable, and in the heart of King's Landing, beneath cellars thought empty, one last cache of wildfire slept, sealed by bronze key missing from every inventory. The key Jaime Lannister had lost that night when Aerys burned. Its cask waited in dark, patient as prophecy, a sleeping ember of an old king's hatred. Above, bells told sunrise over a realm again on Knife's Edge, and the rivers below gleamed like quivering threads of fate, silver in new dawn, racing toward seas where storm and dragon might yet clash, and where perhaps, at last, the realm would learn whether mercy proved stronger than fire.